going to open the regularly scheduled meeting of the Town of Ridgefield Inland Wetlands Board for Thursday, June 8th, 2023. In attendance, I see Alan Pilch, Carson Fincham, Tim Bishop, Chris Phelps, Tracy Miller, myself, Susan Baker, and Caleb Johnson, the Inland Wetlands Agent, and Artie Paranjape, who will do the recording secretary job this evening. I would like to open the next public hearing, IW 23-18. The legal notice reads, notice is hereby given that the Ridgefield Inland Wetlands Board will hold a meeting on June 8th, 2023, commencing at 7 p.m. remotely using video technology in real time, including the following public hearing. IW-23-18, 27 Abbott Avenue, plenary ruling application for construction of apartment complex, associated parking, and drainage infrastructure within the upland review area of wetlands. Owner Alan Viton, applicant Brian Carey. Copies of the application documents are available in Planning and Zoning Office and at Ridgefield CT viewpointcloud.com /records, and the record number is 91085. At the public hearing, interested persons may appear and be heard, and written communications will be received. Then there's information about registering in advance. If I think at this, that's the legal notice. And Caleb Johnson will now give us a list of all of the documents received to date.
Yes. All right. So we have the site plan, the proof of notice by applicant to water company, proof of notice by applicant to the Commissioner of Public Health, wetlands and watercourse delineation / soil report by a soil scientist, drainage report, engineering reports and analysis, and additional drawings to fully describe the proposed project and any filling, excavation, drainage, or hydraulic modifications to watercourses. These next 5 documents are all put into one document, starting with the description of the ecological communities and functions of the wetlands or watercourses and the effects of the proposed regulated activities on these communities and wetland functions. Description of how the applicant will change, diminish, or enhance the ecological communities and functions of the wetlands or watercourses involved in the application and each of the alternatives, and a description of why each alternative considered was deemed neither feasible, not prudent. Analysis of materials to be deposited within the affected property. Measures which mitigate the impact of proposed activity. A biological evaluation of any marsh, swamp, or bog or other wetland within the affected property. A full and detailed description of the proposed construction or the erection of structures on the affected property, including blueprints, engineering, and architectural plans or designs where available and reasonable obtainable. Such description shall include the purposes of such construction, use, or activity. Proof that notices of public hearing were mailed to all property owners within 100 feet of the subject property no less than 10 days prior to the hearing. Written narrative of proposed activity. The location map. Plenary existing conditions site plan, plenary complete set of proposed site plans, plenary erosion and sedimentation control plan, plenary biological narrative of existing conditions and impacts, evidence of compliance with the Town of Ridgefield drainage manual, soils report with sketch of flagged wetlands, property deed, letter of authorization, NDDB request, 27 Abbott Avenue Alternative 1, 27 Abbott Avenue Alternative 2, application cover letter, legal notices dated 5/25 and 6/1/2023, sidewalk neighbor attendance sheet, correspondences, approximately about 50 of letters and emails, neighbor appointed engineer review, the engineer peer review invoice, and the electronic and hand signatures of neighbors. And that's everything.
Thank you very much. Okay, just what we will do going forward now. First, we will have a presentation, I'm assuming from the applicant. After that point, members' questions will be received. And after that, if we still have time, we can start getting public comments. This meeting will no doubt be continued to our next meeting. So if you do not get a chance to speak tonight, you will have a chance at the next meeting. So I think we have. Oh, and also I should mention, we have other things on our agenda as well past this, and it is getting late. So we are going to go till around 10 with this part of the public hearing, do as much as we can, and then continue to the next meeting. So I think we have Brian Carey. Are you going to take care of the presentation?
Yes, Jay Klein, who's also with us, is just going to give a brief introduction, and then I will go over the application in detail.
Okay, I should also have mentioned that we are in the process of getting peer reviews done, and those obviously haven't come in yet, so.
Yeah, I'll make a point of that, or I'm not going to belabor our presentation tonight, because we obviously know the hearing is going to remain open. We just got comments from interested party today, so
Right.
we will respond to that and update the plan. So I'll just give a brief overview, and then just because we'll be back at this again shortly.
Thank you.
Great. Well, Brian, thanks for that introduction, and Madam Chair, thank you, and to your colleagues on the board here. For the record, my name's Jay Klein. I'm a partner at Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy. And as Brian Carey alluded to, the two of us are here tonight on behalf of Mr. Vitan Alimi, the owner of the property at 27 Abbott Avenue. I'm a partner in our zoning and land use group, and Brian is the director of environmental services at Landtech consulting firm. And Mr. Alimi, in his own right, who's here this evening viewing as well, or here viewing as well, is a husband, a father, and as a day job specializes in high quality residential construction and related projects. And the application that brings us all here tonight is a residential construction project. It's the construction of, if approved, 14 homes on the property, 14 desperately needed homes in a state that we all know all too well is facing a severe housing crisis from corner to corner. And there's no community that's untouched by that. I'll share just to orient us briefly, the property, and apologies, my screen is a little tight here, but the property is bounded in red on this image that you see on your screen right now. It is located on the east side of the road, currently in what's called the R7.5 zone, and also within the housing opportunity focus area that's identified in the town plan of conservation and development. Another key part of this property is that it's next door to a wetland area, and a portion of our property is within 100 feet of that wetland area. Of course, the upland review area that you all spoke so much about in the last application and know well from your experience on the board here. And so at most activity that we propose within that 100-foot zone has to come before this group. Your analysis, obviously, are not very technical, very focused, and the role of a wetland board, the important role of a wetland board is well settled, not just by court decisions, not just by state statutes, but by your own wetlands regulations, and particularly it's section 10 that guides your analysis on this type of project. Now, I know Brian and I and our client know this is a project that has received a good amount of attention from neighbors, from the general public. We look forward to hearing their comments later this evening and continuing that dialogue, as this is, as you said, Madam Chair, the first step in a multi-step process. But I think it's important for us to remember what the focus of a wetland review is and what it isn't. And questions or concerns about parking supply, questions or concerns about traffic, questions or concerns about architectural design are not really relevant, are not relevant at all to a wetland review. What is relevant are sound engineering principles and best management practices. And fortunately, we have Brian Carey and his team of professionals at Land Tech who have made sure to incorporate, we think, several of those principles and practices into the project that we have before you tonight. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and turn things over to Brian.
Good evening. Thank you. I will be brief tonight, as I said, because we do know that there will be a peer review of the project by not only the town, but interested parties did hire a Steve Trinkhouse, who we did receive comments through the town today. So we got that this morning. We're digesting it, so we will respond and likely issue we will respond and issue an update to that response prior to the next hearing. Again, just introduce myself quickly. I'm Brian Carey. I'm the Director of Environmental Services with Land Tech. We have offices in Westport, Connecticut. I am a professional wetland scientist and a certified state arborist with over 23 years of experience. Andy Salamides, who is also on the call tonight, is a professional engineer who's working with us to put together the site plans. This is, as Attorney Klein stated, this is a proposal for and I'm going to just share my screen real quick if that is okay. Oh, not that one. Can you see the site plan okay? Yep.
Can you enlarge it?
Yeah, let me hold on one second. I was trying to do that. I'm sorry. Is that okay?
Yeah, now you can just center it. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I can. So anyway, the proposal, the property is at 27 Abbott Avenue in Ridgefield. The site is currently, the site is 0.44 acres, just under half an acre. It's currently developed with a single residential house that was constructed in 1951. There was a previously approved application through zoning and wetlands in 2011 for the construction of 3 condominium type buildings on the rear of the property. And that included leaving the existing residential house. So that, I believe that permit is still valid, or is just on the fringe of expiring. The applicant, who is our client, is proposing to construct the building as shown, which is 14 individual townhouse style units. It's a 2-story residential building. The first floor will be garages with a walk-up. The property slopes pretty gently from west to east. The regulated area on the property is actually just directly off the property. There's a fringe area of wetland that's right on the property boundary, as flagged by our soil scientist, Anthony Zemba, who will be in attendance at future meetings. Basically, the regulated activity is to construct a portion of the building. There's actually 4 townhouses being constructed within the 100-foot upland review area. And there's a driveway that basically encompasses the southern side of the property. we've maintained a pretty substantial buffer to the wetlands. There's a wall that's going in here, but that will all be planted based on the planting plan that we have submitted into the record. There are no permanent or direct impacts to wetlands. All of the work that is being proposed as part of this project is taking place within the upland review area. So there are no direct impact to wetlands associated with the project. We have a pretty substantial erosion and sediment control plan that has been submitted as part of our plans. We did go out there and flag the wetlands as part of this application. That soil report is in the record. Again, there are no wetlands on the property. There is a small stream course that is located on town of Ridgefield land, on the housing authority land, just directly off of the property. The site is currently developed, as I said, with a single residential house. The back part of the property is all lawn. There's not much landscape feature to the site itself. As far as best management practices, we are complying with the town of Ridgefield stormwater guidance. The idea is to capture all of the roof runoff and driveway runoff into a Coltex system, and then discharge it via level spreader over into what will be a planted buffer adjacent to the wetlands. Go through this real quick. All of the site is currently serviced and will be serviced with municipal water and sewer. There's no potable well or septic associated with our proposal. We did submit a wetlands functions and values report as part of our documentation and as part of the record. Basically, the primary functions of the wetlands were determined to be sediment toxicant and pathogen retention and nutrient removal, and to a lesser part flood attenuation, production export, and wildlife habitat. Since there are really no impacts to wetlands and we're staying in the upland review area, we do have a planting plan that we put together within the buffer area that we feel is substantial to mitigate any of the impacts within the upland review area associated with our project. Again, I was going to keep this short just because of the time frame tonight. We do anticipate getting, like I said, peer review from not only the town, but we do have Steve Trinkhouse's memo. We are going to address all of that. I spoke with Caleb this morning. We will have a response to that within the next week of the Trinkhouse memo, and then as soon as possible, once we get the review from the third-party review from the staff. I can answer any questions about the application, but I will be ready to give a more detailed presentation at the next meeting.
Thank you. Any comments from the board at this point?
I see Tracy's hand.
Okay, Tracy?
Just a quick question. Does your proposal preserve pre-development site hydrology during a 50-year storm?
Yes, that is in our water quality report, our drainage manual. We can have Andy Semelides, who's the project engineer. I will have that answer for you at the next meeting. He is on the line right now. That's more of his question that's germane to him.
Okay. Anything else, Tracy?
Well, and I guess what is the impervious surface calculation of the proposed plan?
I'll have to get that for you. Let me just,
Thank you.
I'm gonna,
Alan?
Yes, thank you. I just want to first point out, Mr. Carey, that you stated during your brief presentation that roof runoff would go into the subsurface chambers.
no, it's going into the level spreader.
Correct. It's not modeled that way at all. I just want to point that out.
Yes, correct.
And I'll just say that I see, in sort of reviewing these plans as well. I saw that the project narrative presented 3 alternatives, the no build alternative. The second was a larger build alternative with a larger building. And the third was the current design. But I'll say that this member of the Inland Wetlands Board who's speaking right now certainly would like to see an alternative that has no construction, no impervious surfaces within the upland review area. I think that's it's an alternative that is both prudent and feasible. And I think it is something that we should be presented to this board for its consideration. I did have the opportunity to review the drainage report, and I'll just say that I am a civil engineer who does a lot of stormwater work. I'm also a landscape architect. And one of the concerns that I have with the adjacent wetland is that I have concerns that the stormwater management plan as designed will result in flooding and sedimentation into the wetland. I saw that the chambers as designed will not meet the treatment of the water quality volume as required. And just looking at the design, I saw the elevation of the stone invert under the chambers and the 6-inch diameter outlet, which is 18 inches higher. And that would provide I'll say a water quality volume that is a capture and treatment of the volume, which is much less than the water quality volume. So it is something that you should rethink and recalculate. I also noted that in reviewing the plans, and I say I do this professionally myself all the time, the deep test hole that you did within the footprint of the chambers was essentially at elevation 201. It indicated that there was water draining into the hole, into the deep test pit, 4 feet, 48 inches below grade, which would place it at 197 feet based on the datum you have. And since the stone below the chambers is at 198.7 or only 1.7 feet above the free water seep, I'll just point out that 3 feet of unsaturated soil, that is the minimum separation that's required in accordance with the Stormwater Management Design Manual. So the chambers do not even meet that standard. And the concern here is that in that instance, you're also counting on a infiltration of, out of the chambers into the groundwater. And typically what occurs when there's not 3 feet of separation is that you get mounding and mounding underneath the chambers and you get none at all. There's no attenuation of the flows. So that is a definite concern on my part as well. I saw that you used a 2-inch infiltration rate, but not based on soil testing. And I looked at the soils that were present in that location. And that is at the very high end of the rate that these soils show. So I think you should use a much more realistic one or do one on infiltration rate based on actual testing. I'll just say also, one of the drainage areas that was analyzed, that is drainage area 1B. I saw the time of concentration that was used was 17.6 minutes. That is extremely unrealistic and incorrect to use that, because that's all the runoff from the roofs of these houses. And that runoff will get to these chambers very quickly. And to use the potential time of concentration from these narrow fringes of lawn areas or mown areas, to the north and south, is, I think, incorrect and unrealistic. And what I think this does is it vastly underestimates the peak rate of runoff that's actually being conveyed to these chambers. And I think the chambers are very much undersized for what you will need. So I think the design has to be completely relooked at as well, so that it actually will accomplish what is needed. And the concern, obviously, is this is at the headwaters of the Titicaca River, and there are substantial areas that we encounter flooding on, adjacent to the Titicaca River, just downstream of this property. So that's a concern. Plus, it also has the potential to change the hydrology, the hydro period inside this wetland, which would obviously change the characteristics of it. So these are things that I saw in the stormwater report that definitely needed to be addressed. Let me also just mention one thing too. The Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual also says that the separation between chambers and a building should be a minimum of 25 feet, and that is not provided also on the plan. It's much less than that, and that's a sure way to have impacts within the building itself from the stormwater management plan. So I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of these things, and these were items that I certainly caught very quickly in reviewing the project.
Thank you, Alan. Anyone? Brian, would you care to respond at this time, or do you want to come back with?
No, we'll come back. I mean, there's gonna be a lot more discussion, so it's 9:30. I don't want to keep you guys. You said you had to stop at 10. So I have the comments, and we will address them.
I guess I just have one last,
Yes, Tracy.
Tracy Miller, I'm a landscape architect, and I'm by no means a drainage engineer. But it does appear that the 50-year storm calculations, as a layman, when I add up areas A and B, and subtract out the treatment and compare them with the pre-development runoff, if I'm looking at this correctly, it appears you're 979 cubic feet. You're adding that amount compared to existing. And we do, when you're over, our impervious surface coverage sort of permittable amount, you're required to supply this drainage plan, but it is supposed to meet pre-development standards. So I just say double check that, make sure I'm not misreading it, but that would be an important point. If I'm correct, that would add up to over 7,000 gallons and 122 bathtubs. I could be wrong, but just double check that.
Thank you, Tracy. Any other members of the board comments at this time? We'll have more to comment on at the next meeting, obviously. Okay, doesn't appear to be. Fine, then we can, it looks like we have some time to get to some public comments. I guess since Mr. Trinkhouse was mentioned, if he is here to speak on behalf of the neighborhood, we could have him comment first. If he's planning on commenting.
Yes, thank you. Just had to click the button correctly. Good evening, Steve Trinkus for the record. I'm a licensed professional engineer in Southbury. I was retained towards the end of last week by the neighbors group to do a peer review of this plan with a focus really on stormwater management, because I am aware, having done a lot of work in Ridgefield, of flooding issues along this stream corridor. So I submitted a report yesterday, and I sent Caleb a copy this morning as I realized I had a typo in it. Alan made some very good points, and I'm going to concur with many of them. Starting on page 2 of my report, percolation tests are not a suitable test for designing stormwater infiltration practices. They measure both horizontal, vertical movement of water, which is overestimating what the actual infiltration rate is. For stormwater management practices that might infiltrate, we only use the vertical infiltration rate, which is only done by what's called a double ring infiltration test. So right off the bat, that's a major flaw here. Also, as Alan pointed out, this test pit number 1, it looks to me, having done thousands of test pits and many of them in Ridgefield, the description of test pit 1 seems to be all fill material on what is likely almost a wetland soil. It does not strike me as a natural soil profile. So basically this underground Cultex system, which I concur with the other comments about being undersized, is likely not able to infiltrate, quite honestly, anything at all. Because if it is sitting on top or close proximity to a natural wetland soil that was filled, obviously years ago, wetland soils don't infiltrate. That's why they're poorly drained soils. So I think it's a great concern that this will not function as intended. There is also a singular 6-inch PVC outlet pipe coming out of this detention system to a stone-filled trench. However, the hydrologic model is showing 2 pipes. And they're overestimating the potential outflows from this. If you have 1 6-inch pipe, only 1 6-inch pipe shows up in the model. Additionally, a level spreader is not what is shown on the applicant's plan. A level spreader is generally a stone-filled trench with a hardened edge, i.e. think of a concrete sidewalk edge on the downhill side and also wrapping along the ends, so that when it fills up with water, when the crushed stone fills up with water, it will uniformly flow over the entire downhill edge of this concrete curb at a very low depth, like a 1/16 or an 1/8 inch of water, to maintain overland flow. When you have just a stone-filled trench cut into the ground, you'll always have high and low points on the downhill side, and water doing what water does is finds the low point and will become concentrated flow along the low points of that stone soil interface. You can try putting a board in there. The same thing will happen. The board will settle and you wind up with concentrated flow. So this is not a level spreader. It's more akin to a curtain drain. There is basically absolutely no treatment of runoff from this site at all. It's correct that the roof drains are not being directed to either the detention system or the level spreader, because the level spreader is a discharge system, and the water coming off the roof drains, I assuming somewhat to the north via gutter pipes, is going to go right down towards the wetlands. It's not going to make a right-hand turn and decide to go into the level spreader. You have just 2 catch basins, and it goes into this underground Cultex system. There's absolutely no treatment of the runoff. And parking, any type of pavement, you're going to have total suspended solids. You're going to have metals and hydrocarbons from the movement of vehicles in and out. Furthermore, you actually do get nitrogen and phosphorus via atmospheric deposition, both on the pavement and the roof. And that is why the roof area also needs to be attenuated and treated. Without any type of treatment, you will see these increased pollutant loads being discharged to the wetland watercourse system, which is literally just off the property line. Based on the mapping, it appears one flag actually might even be on the applicant's property, but it's kind of hard to tell with the scale of the mapping. So you will see adverse impacts by adversely affecting the water quality in the stream that is there. And as that does join the Titicaca River, which ultimately goes into New York State, is a greater concern. The Ridgefield stormwater regulations, allow a certain amount of impervious cover on the site, and then you have to attenuate, what is beyond that. In this particular case, the only roughly 6,489 square feet is going to the underground Caltech system, while 7,700 and change square feet is not being treated. I have done many 8-30G applications, and it's my professional opinion that even though the regulations only require this minimal treatment of a percentage of the runoff, that your obligations under a professional engineer is not to have is to be cognizant and meet public health and safety standards. That means addressing all of the stormwater runoff from this site. The total increase of impervious cover on the site is 11,132 square feet. Presently, there is 3,064 square feet on this site, and that is a significant increase in impervious cover. So you've got to attenuate all of that runoff. You also have to treat it to have any chance of not impacting the wetlands and water courses. While the applicant has calculated the water quality volume, they're claiming the treatment volume is the entire volume within the Caltech system. Well, as you have an outlet pipe from it, the volume above that outlet pipe really can't be considered. The water quality volume per the 2004 DEP manual must be captured and treated. And it's got to be contained, and it's got to be treated. Simply holding water in a bathtub does not mean it's treated. You've got to have a treatment mechanism for it, and this project does not. In addition, under the DEP manual, there is the groundwater recharge requirement. This is to maintain pre-development infiltration rates for post-development conditions. That calculation has not been provided. It has not been demonstrated that it will be achieved on this particular site. Again, the infiltration rate of 2 inches per hour, I agree with Alan, is overly generous. I would suspect if you did an infiltration rate at or below the bottom of this system in the soil, you're likely to get less than 1 inch per hour infiltration rate, which would change the dynamics of the design tremendously as far as that goes. Let's see here, having done many of these 8-30G applications throughout Fairfield County, parking ratios, don't necessarily have to meet the zoning. However, in this particular case, it's an unacceptably low ratio for the type of units being proposed here. And you would need at least 6 more parking spaces even to closely, have enough parking, which would mean having more impervious cover on the site in closer proximity to the wetlands, thus increasing the potential for further adverse impacts to the wetlands and water courses. On the erosion and sedimentation control side, they show a construction entrance of 25 feet in length. The minimum is 50 foot per the 2002 erosion guidelines. There's also a temporary stockpile in the middle of the driveway. Well, how are you going to have construction equipment go in and out when you've got basically a pile of dirt sitting dead center in it? While they show silt fence on both sides of the driveway, silt fence is shown perpendicular to the contours. Silt fence is only installed parallel to the contours. If you run it perpendicular or even kind of on a diagonal to the contours, what you wind up with is concentrated flow along the face of the silt fence, which increases the flow velocity, which then allows the water to erode the soil at the base of the silt fence. And then if you have a down gradient fence that is properly installed parallel to the contours, you have increased sediment loads and flow against that fence, which can cause it to fail. So silt fences only go parallel, not perpendicular to contours. In addition, the town of Ridgefield regulations required 2 rows of silt fence, 3 foot on center is, I believe, the standard that we've all followed. But according to the plan, there's only a single row, so it's not even in compliance with that. The detail for the silt fence, and maybe I'm being a little on the picky side here, but it shows the tongue of the fabric being placed underground and basically laid parallel to the ground surface, but under a couple inches of soil. That's not the correct way to put the silt fence fabric tongue in. You drive the post in, you're supposed to have a trench right where the post is going, and that tongue is set 6 inches into the ground vertically on the same alignment as the rest of the fence, and then backfilled. So there is no way that it can wash up. I have seen installations similar to what is being proposed here, where rainfall will actually erode the soil, and then that fabric kind of flaps in the wind, and water simply goes right under it and does not get caught by the silt fence. There's also no detailed construction sequence for a project, which is definitely required when you're pretty much going to disturb the entire site, and you're going to kind of have to disturb it almost all at the same time. So in summary, the plans, the stormwater management system does not comply with the Ridgefield regulations, nor the Connecticut DEP 2004 manual. There will be increased pollutant loads being discharged to the wetland watercourse system. In addition, as it's unlikely any infiltration will occur, you will have significant increases in runoff volume being discharged to this watercourse. And why is volume such a concern? Because volume is what causes erosion in the channel. And increased runoff volumes mean the stream flows higher for a longer period of time. The channel basically doesn't like that. So the only way the channel can address feeling stressed is that it erodes. It increases its cross-sectional area. And that's what increased runoff volumes do. And that's why it's imperative that runoff volumes be attenuated by either infiltration of water or by providing the channel protection volume per the DEP manual, which reduces the post-development peak rate to half the pre-development peak rate. And that way, this water surface in the stream is lower in a more stable section of the channel, and thus does not cause erosion within the channel. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight, and I will be available future meetings if the commission has further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any members further comments based on or questions right now for Mr. Trinkus? Tim?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. The question was raised to me, so I just wanted to bring it to the record and for the discussion amongst the board. Steve, in your professional opinion and experience as a PE with projects similar to this, with this site, based on the evidence presented so far, soil data and such, would this location be appropriate for pervious pavement and subsurface, additional subsurface galleries, based on soil types and the location itself?
Thank you. Tim, based on the soil tests out here, I don't think it's really suitable for permeable pavement. I think have to be more deeper tests, and you'd also have to do the infiltration testing for that. I don't think the lower end of this site where the underground galleries are currently proposed is suitable for infiltration. It is possible that areas higher up on the site, away from the wetlands, may be, but you'd have to do a lot more testing to confirm that.
Okay, then I guess we could go to the public. As the applicant's attorney mentioned, the questions in front of this board relate to wetlands, water courses, and not to any other concerns that are going to be handled by planning and zoning. So we'd appreciate it if you would tailor your questions to this part of the application only. Also, you'll need to state your name for the record, name and address for the record when you are recognized to speak. And in order to get recognized to speak, you need to raise your virtual hand. And as I said, we will try to do as many as we can right now. Also, if someone else has already made the statement that you were going to make, we'd appreciate it to keep it to a variety of comments at this point instead of restating something that's been said, if that's possible, given we have only a short time right now. So I'm not going to take up any more of that time. It looks like we have one person with a hand up. Do we have Leah Hughes now?
Yes, hi, good evening. My name is Leah Hughes and I have lived at 37 Gilbert Street since 2019. On September 1st, 2021, my neighbor's property at 43 Gilbert Street and several others on Gilbert Street were flooded as a result of a severe rain event associated with Hurricane Ida. This was not a minor flooding event. My basement and driveway were filled with over 24 inches of water, as well as water flowed well into Gilbert Street as well. The result of this flood cost thousands of dollars worth of damage, including 3 totaled vehicles. And the water came from the drainage creek that connects to the storm sewer system that's located between myself, 41 Gilbert Street, 43 Gilbert Street, and 3 Abbott Avenue. And the same creek is part of the wetland system that extends along the east side of Abbott Avenue, including behind 27 Abbott Avenue. So in the aftermath of this flooding, I reached out to Jake Muller, the town engineer, to Rudy Marconi, the first selectman, and to get an understanding of how the town plans to improve this drainage system and associated storm sewers. And I received very little information aside from that there were plans within the next 5 years to do a study. And over the last 2 years, I have continued to reach out for updates with no response on their end, or minimal. And even things like what to do if we have another storm, like how can we best prepare ourselves since we know that this is a problem, and just not a lot of communication there, which has been incredibly frustrating. And the last time I communicated with the selectman's office, which was a few weeks ago, I received a response that the studies were being conducted for New Street and Ramapo. But my question is, what about Gilbert? What about Abbott? You know, there are other streets in this vicinity that are getting impacted. And now with the proposed construction for 27 Abbott, it's extremely concerning. So to lead into that, my concern with the proposed construction of 27 Abbott Avenue is that the water absorption, the drainage catch basins will be insufficient and cause an increase in flooding to adjacent properties. And I fear that the flooding will become more frequent, possibly more intense. And I'm deeply concerned that the town is not prepared to protect these downstream properties and developing a plan to mitigate additional stormwater into that drainage creek when it currently can't handle the volume of a 100-year storm condition. So in summary, I just want to urge this board to really look at this request. I think it should be denied. The town has not invested in the proper infrastructure to protect existing properties from flood damage as a result of stormwater, and these adjacent drainage creeks and wetlands, they're continuing to have an issue. In addition, I don't think the town has proven to spend the right amount of time on this, which leads me to believe that this property, if approved, will continue to flood, become worse, and leave downstream residents with reoccurring damages. And that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I couldn't hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thomas Volga now.
Yes, hi, thank you for recognizing me and for affording me the opportunity to speak. My name is Thomas Volgenau. I live at 28 Abbott Avenue. And this is more of a question here, but in looking at the materials with the untrained eye of a non-technically minded individual, I'm just mindful of the fact that the assessment seems to be done on the land as a relatively sort of isolated and level set of land, My property is immediately to the west and at a considerably higher elevation than 27 Abbott. And so my question to the board would be, is there an assessment that's done that takes into account not just sort of roof runoff or the individual elements of the property, but rather also the fact that immediately westward to the property is higher elevation with runoff coming down my driveway, my property, and so forth. So I would just put that to the board as a point of consideration. Maybe that this assessment has already been done, but I'd be remiss if it wasn't something that I flagged as something that I witnessed from my end. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. Next, we have David Sachs.
Good evening. Can I share one slide? I don't see how I can share my screen.
I'm gonna promote you as a panelist.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I don't have the qualifications of
We need your name and address first.
Sure. My name is David Sachs, and I live at 36 Abbott Avenue in Ridgefield. And when I heard about this project, I started to think about the rainfall involved and how much it might be. And so I put this slide together as a way of helping me and others think about it. And from two different sources, I found that average rainfall in Ridgefield is about 49 inches a year, although that doesn't include snow. And it turns out that 1 inch of rain on 1 acre of land is 27,154 gallons of water. And Abbott is about 27 Abbott is 40.47 acres of land. And so that would imply that annual rainfall on 27 Abbott is 625,357 gallons of water per year. I made the assumption, apparently incorrectly, that the conversion of permeable to non-permeable land would be about 80% loss. I've been told more recently it's probably more like 90% given buildings and paving and everything else. And that would imply roughly 500,000 gallons a year of water. So the questions that occurred to me were, where's all that water going to go? And what will be the impact on streams, neighbors, wetlands, et cetera? I was talking to Leah the other night, and she said, that's exactly what I'm trying to get people to hear. We're talking about an enormous amount of rainfall, and she's very worried, as am I, about where it's going to go and what kind of harm it might do to either the people who live downstream from it or to the wetlands themselves. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. And have you submitted your sheet to the record? You can certainly do that if you'd like to.
Okay, yeah, I did.
Email it in.
I did send, I'll email this in. I did send a letter, but I'll send this as well. Again, thank you.
Oh, okay, one more. Laura Castelluccio.
First of all, thank you for allowing me to speak at this meeting. I just wanted to introduce myself formally. Laura Castelluccio. I have been a current owner of 32 Abbott Avenue for the past 24 years. What I was going to show you is that I am the direct neighbor across the street from 27 Abbott. I received a letter from Carmody on Friday, May 26th, the Friday of Memorial Day, via non-certificate of mailing. This letter provided notice of the proposed project on 27 Avenue, which is across the street from me and puts my home within 100 feet. This letter was received 7 business days prior to today. So what I just wanted to share with you is my observations being a homeowner directly across the street from this home for 24 years. So much to our delight, and you would be surprised, we have observed over the many years the existence of wildlife. We have seen deer, rabbits, coyotes, skunk, and raccoon, which makes its way across our lawn and into the area behind 27 Abbott Avenue, which we are identifying as that wetlands area. There are no other areas on Abbott Avenue where these animals can find shelter and exit our street anonymously. I have observed from the outside and from the inside of my home where I have clear view from my kitchen window. And also during the site visit on Sunday, June 5th, you can clearly hear the birds communicating with each other through their song, and it was very loud. What I've also observed within the last 24 years is the erosion of my lawn, the gap between my grass and the street, from the runoff during rainstorms coming down the hill from High Ridge Avenue going towards Gilbert, with more area being covered by impervious material, concerns about the runoff water and how it'll affect downstream Gilbert. Also, if you've ever been on Abbott Avenue during a snowstorm, there is really no place to put the piles of snow, especially now if this 14 unit area will have all that to plow away. I don't know where they will be putting that. So again, my concerns are many. I just wanted to point out the wildlife that we've probably all observed, and also my concerns about the runoff. And again, this living directly across from this, this proposal is undesirable, random, unnecessary, based on the property and the neighborhood. Our neighborhood is really a neighborhood where you can touch your neighbors' homes, and it's closely settled with no sidewalks, as you can see from your review on June 5th. So I feel this will have a negative impact on the wildlife and aquatic life that inhabits this area, and I request that you deny this application. And I will also I've submitted a letter, my husband and I have submitted a letter, back on May 26th, and I will also submit this one into the record.
Yeah, and whatever documentation you were not able to show us, please feel free to send that into the office. We'll put it in the record.
Okay, thank you.
So I think at this point, it being 10:01, we will continue this public hearing till June 22nd. And, oh, I'm sorry, Brian, did you have something else you would like to add? Your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to just prior to the end of the hearing tonight, just say that we just got the comments today that were put in the record by Steve Trinkhouse, which was written. And I understand we do have a copy of the record from Alan, what was described to us. We will get responses to all of those questions and comments. We can address those. Again, we just didn't have time to prepare a formal response to that for tonight's meeting. We will have a more comprehensive response at the next public hearing, night of the public hearing. We also look forward to getting the comments from the town's third-party review, just so that we can put it all together in one cohesive response, rather than metering it out, which isn't helpful to anyone. Andy Salamides, as like I said, he is on the line. He has been reviewing the engineering concerns that have been brought forward by Mr. Trinkhouse. And again, we will have a thorough and detailed response to all of those questions.
Thank you. Okay, then we're continued. Thank you very much.
Apologies, Madam Chair, just to.
Oh, I'm
clarify.
sorry. Yes, Mr. Klein.
Thank you so much. No, I appreciate it. I'll be brief. I think something that came up again and again was the national, the endangered species database, and our letter in the file when Caleb was listing that long list. We did reach out to DEEP, and they confirmed to us that there are no known, endangered, threatened, or special concern species in the area, which is a good thing. A neighbor had mentioned, I think it was the last person who spoke, Ms. Castelluccio, about the notice. Just want to say for the record that we, pursued the neighbor notice in complete conformance with the regulations, and I'm glad that the letter got there. It took it sounds like a day to get there, which I'm glad that it was so that it arrived in time. And then the last piece was just to confirm the continuation of this hearing. We'll all be together again on, Thursday, June 22nd at 7 p.m. And
Yes.
We'll all be same Zoom station, same format.
Same instructions as last time, yes.
All right, terrific.
And it will be the second public hearing after the other one.
Understood.
Okay. Good for now? Thank you. Okay, back to the agenda. And thanks the public. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. Okay, well, I appreciate everybody's hanging in there tonight and hope you have a good evening, and I guess see you later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Oh, we're adjourned at 10:28.
This is Kurt Carr, on the record. Thank you for watching.